Only this past year have I gotten really serious about photography. I'm generally a video shooter, which this 70-200 had a lot of video benefits. But I was missing a good portrait lens for still photography portraiture, and I was debating over an 85mm or a 135mm for portraits. I know that there's multiple camps of portrait lenses, fanboys and girls, and I was debating 85 or 135. The 135 had a lot of great reviews for the magical quality of that f2.0 bokeh out of focus areas of this lens. And I was looking at a lot of pictures online, and the out of focus areas and that magic bokeh impressed me more of the images I saw online with the 135 versus the 85 1.2. I had the 85 1.8 for a little bit, but there was a lot of chromatic aberration, color distortion on the edges, on the fringes with the 85 1.8 that I returned it. It didn't really work for me. But the 135, I was thinking is the kind of portrait lens for me. But having used the 135 in the field and compare that to the 70-200 at 135, I don't think for me the 135 f2.0 was a good purchase because the number of good shots that I ended up getting out of this lens weren't as many as the 70-200. A lot of times I'm still not at the level where when I'm shooting handheld I can be completely stable. I still haven't developed all of those techniques. When I shoot with a tripod, that's fine, but I don't, for my kind of photography, I don't often shoot with a tripod or a monopod or any other stabilization. I shoot handheld. And in those cases, the 135 at low f-stops, I'm not good enough yet to really utilize this lens properly. I think this lens should only be for the pros who have worked their way up to, with all their techniques, to be able to use this properly. For me, I get maybe 70% bad photos. Not good. 70% bad. So 30% are winners, and those 30% beautiful, beautiful photos with this lens. But man, that's not a good ratio to be shooting at to not getting winners. Versus the 70-200, I get 85% winners, and then the 15% that aren't good are mostly because of my camera framing, or I somehow get it out of focus. But with the 135 f2.0, I was getting a lot of them out of focus, soft, jittery. I wish this had image stabilization at 135, but that's also a factor. And the lens really, you don't really take advantage of this lens until you go below an f4. So when you're shooting at 2.0 or 2.8, man, there's nothing that I've used so far that compares to that magic and that beauty shooting a 135 at an f2 when everything's in focus, that you want to be in focus. But when you're shooting handheld run and gun, and you're trying to get a variety of shots, this is just not practical. I should have realized that before I bought it, but now having used it, and this is advice for anyone who's kind of in my boat, don't get the 135 f2, no matter how awesome you've seen those pictures. Unless you have $1,000 to burn, the 135 is a very special lens for the right situations. You can't just pull this out anywhere and get the best shots out of this, versus I think the 70-200 with exterior locations, you can bust this lens out and get great photos and video. The 135 is not good for video at all. Unless you are on a tripod and you're doing a sit-down interview and everything's locked, then maybe the 135 is good for close-up interview. But I would never use the 135 f2 for video on the cinema cameras or the DSLRs, or even put this on a GH5 or GH4 with an adapter. So the versatility with the 135, no, this was a very stupid purchase on my part. I do love that 30% of photos that I've taken so far with this that look amazing on the full frame on a 5D Mark IV. I wouldn't use this on a crop center camera because it is just a little bit too cropped in. On a full frame, this is amazing in those few shots that I got. I think there were accidents because I couldn't repeat them, but the 70-200, I think this should be in everyone's bag that can't afford the 70-200 f2.8 and they just want telephoto shots. Great camera, great lens, great lens.